All right, I think we can get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining Epicenter tonight. We launched in July of 2020 as a newsletter, and just by virtue of all of you joining us tonight, or however you're watching this, we've clearly evolved into so much more. So the story of Epicenter, my husband and I live in Jackson Heights, Queens, which has been hard hit by the pandemic. Last spring, if you if I were coming to you live, you would have been hearing ambulance sirens behind me. Like it was just a very acutely hit by COVID. And the same factors that make us love our neighborhood, it's dense, it's convenient, the whole world gathers here, really did make it a perfect storm when it came to COVID. And so we launched this newsletter as a way to give and get help. We launched in July of 2020. And, everything from where you can find some outdoor space to go on a hike, get some good takeout. And it really took off. It was obviously where New York was. I'll fast forward to early January, where just personally, I was in the process of booking my own parents for vaccines and found the process to be near impossible. And I had two thoughts once I got them the vaccine. Thank God I got them the vaccine. And the second was, how do people who don't have as many resources or digital savvy, allegedly, as I do, how would they manage? And so I sort of set out thinking, well, Epicenter was born to get New York through the pandemic. For elderly people in New York in January, there was basically, one question on everyone's minds of how can we get a vaccine? And we started to just help our neighbors by word of mouth. And by early February, because we interact with so many restaurants and small businesses, we started to hear from restaurants saying, how can we book our workers for vaccines once their eligibility was granted? So this word of mouth that we kind of operate in, we're a really newsletter, but we're very much on the ground, helped us immensely to spread the good word about how you can book a vaccine. And it started, I can't stress enough how much this was a word of mouth exercise. Over the last month, something amazing has happened. So we started to do an intake form online, but we also put out a call saying if anyone wants to help book New Yorkers for vaccines, please let us know. And we've had more than 150 volunteers sign up. And as a result of that, we've registered nearly 3,000 people for vaccines in New York, but we have a few New Jerseyans we've helped. We venture into Pennsylvania sometimes. And kind of, as I said, the whole world meets in Queens. And so the people in need have often said, well, I live in Woodside, but my cousin is in Long Island. Can you help my cousin? Or my parents are in New Jersey. And so this chain effect, which is really how community is built, has again served us very well. We want to start to pivot our efforts from directly booking folks for their vaccines to a few areas. One is just awareness and outreach, right? Can we get New Yorkers to know that, they qualify? Some of them have qualified for months. Where can they go? How can they do this? And the second piece, which brings us to what we're about to talk about for the next 45 minutes or so, is how do you book a vaccine? And how, even when the sites say no appointments available, can you circumvent that? As you might imagine, our volunteers, by booking literally thousands of people by now, have some tips and tricks up their sleeves. They're going to share that with us. But we also want to amplify this message. So our hope is that if you're joining us, you not only thinking booking your own vaccine, but you're asking your friends, your neighbors, your doorman, your educators in your kids' schools, the folks who work around and in your kids' schools, nonprofits, people who you are ordering pizza from, delivery workers, your Uber driver. I mean, the number of people who qualify is growing every week. But we also see our efforts tonight as just one way to amplify a process that we've had a lot of luck with, which is just to ask our neighbors if they need our help. Um, so, on that note, before I turn it over to Kris, who's one of our star trainers, to take you through the tips and tricks portion, I truly believe that helping people get their vaccines is one of the most important things we could be doing right now. Actually, the most important thing we can be doing right now. It determines not just the society we are on the other side of the pandemic, but whether we get to the other side. We'll talk later, I hope, in some of your questions and the answers we might have around the variants and the caseloads right now. But it does feel like time is running out. And I feel like we cannot book people quickly enough. And so we also appeal to the community for your help. On that note, I will turn to one of the best members of our community, Kris, who is going to talk a little bit about the training process that she's structured and what we're going to show you tonight. It's worth noting that you can ask us questions throughout. Just put them in the chat, the comments of however you're watching, and we will be answering questions throughout. Thank you, Kris, so much.
Thank you, Mitra. Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind words. I've prepared an overview of 3 different sites, the state site, the city health department's website, as well as the health and hospitals websites. We're going to do question and answer after each one. The things I want you to keep an eye on as we go through all of them are in each of these videos. I'm going to show you how to refresh these sites and see what's available on them without clicking refresh in a way that's going to make you start back at the beginning. If you've gone into any of these websites and put in a loved one's name or your own name and then hit refresh and it makes you start over, that's very frustrating. And I'm going to show you how to avoid that 100%. I'm also going to show you how you can really disregard that they say no appointments available. Each of these sites have cancellations on a constant basis, and I'm going to show you how you can book those. I'm also going to talk in each video about what time of day or time in the hour that each of these sites put out new appointments. So how you can really focus your effort based on the time of day or where you're trying to get to. Most of all, I want you to focus on not getting discouraged with these websites. We just had a large expansion in the number of people who were eligible as of this week. And for a few days after those eligibility groups get larger, it is a little slower. You just got to stick with this. And with the tips here and after Q&A with all of the bookers that you'll be able to speak to tonight, I feel confident that you're going to be able to book your shot. So just trying to stay, positive. Don't get discouraged. Stick with it. If you don't get it at first, you will get it the next time. You're going to get faster every time when you're trying to book this. I will say that every week, the speed at which you have to click all of these little buttons is getting slower. It's getting a little less competitive every week. Supply is getting better. And at this point, it's probably good for us to start with the video at this point. The first one we're going to look at is the state site review, because that covers the largest territory. It's the whole state of New York. This is the New York State site that you can use to book an appointment anywhere in the state of New York. This footage was shot on March 19th and March 20th. We're going to hit Get Started. When I'm booking for someone, I like to have their information on a Word document or a sticky on my desktop. Not only because it makes it faster for me so I can just cut and paste, but also because it makes what I put in more accurate. So I'm just going to hit copy and paste and put her date of birth into the website. I'm going to do the same thing with her zip code and start entering in her demographic information. So I'm going to fill in the bubbles and indicate that she lives and works in New York. And then I'm going to go down below and start going through the individual questions. This is the section for health problems. This is where I would indicate if she were qualified for the vaccine based on a health issue. But I'm going to indicate no here so that I can go through these questions one at a time in regard to her job. Now, if she were older and qualified by age, we wouldn't be asked any of these questions in regard to job. So for this purpose, I've made her date of birth 1980 so that I can go through and show you all of these checkboxes and how it works if you're putting in someone's job as their qualification. I'm going to go through all of these fairly quickly here. I'm going to say no to all of the ones that don't apply to her until finally I say yes to something, and then it stops asking me questions. When you're filling out this website on behalf of someone or for yourself, you'll go through them obviously much more slowly than I am here. Then we go down to the bottom, we hit I consent and submit. And then it gives me the option to locate providers. If you've navigated this website before, you may notice some recent changes. First off, it used to just show whatever location was closest to the person's home address. So the Javits Center would have been top right here, even though there weren't any appointments. The website's rearranged now, and the Javits Center is still here, but it's not at the top of the list. The first bunch of locations are all the places that are actively showing newly released appointments. But we're going to be going to look at the Javits Center anyway, even though it says no appointments, because we're going to be able to get some cancellations. Another recent change is that some of the locations have completely altered the interface. And if your location has made these changes, it's going to look a little bit more like this. But you can see here that a number of locations, including Rochester, still book in the same format as the Javits Center. And here I'm showing you how these appointments look when there's a whole lot of them. You're going to be looking for 1s and 2s of these with these little bubbles over to the right that you can then select and hit next. This pop-up does happen when you're still competing with other people for these spots. So this is part of the stuff you have to do quickly. It's important that you click that quickly and hit next. Once you see this screen where you can enter in information about the patient, their address, their name, you no longer have the same ticking clock. You're not competing with other people. There is some time limit to how long you have to enter in this information. Let's go back now to the first tab and select Schedule an Appointment at the Javits Center. After you click on Schedule your appointment at the Javits Center, you may see this No Appointments Available screen. Don't be concerned. Once you see this, I want you to hit Command and R on your keyboard if you're a Macintosh user, or Control and R if you have a PC, and you'll see this small flash. That's the page refreshing, and we're going to hit refresh until we see an appointment. And then we're going to hit Select Visit Time. Now inside this day that I'm showing you on the screen, there are no visit times available. But we can sit here and hit next for a bit and watch for some cancellations to show up inside this date. This is a good strategy if you know a particular day that you're available or if you're looking for something same day. Otherwise, you can stay in the area where you have various appointments to select, and then you're going to continue to hit refresh until you see a day that you want. And then you'll book it by hitting Select Visit Time, and then you'll click on the bubble next to the visit time that you want. I did edit down this footage. What you're seeing here is not how long it'll take you. It'll take a little bit longer than this. It takes me a little bit longer than this. But one of the tricks that I do want you to keep in mind in regard to this website is that most of the cancellations are put out every 6 minutes, starting at 02 after the hour and then every 6 minutes after that. It really does work, so I keep this list on a sticky next to my computer. 02, 08, 14, 20, 26, 32, 38, 44, 50, and 56. And I have a little star next to the 02 and the 32 times because those are the ones that come out with the most appointments. This really does work and is a way that you can kind of aim what time you're sitting there and clicking refresh so you can get those appointments when they do pop out from the website. So I know that was very fast. I do have a much slower version of all of this available on my own YouTube channel. And all of the tips that I've just shared with you, I learned from other people, including a number of the people who are on this panel today.
Thank you, Kris.
Sure.
I saw that you showed the sticky with the times.
Mm-hmm.
And that really works? Does it work on every single one of those, or it's like a guidepost?
I would say it's a guidepost. There are things that come out in between. But if I have these websites in front of me and I'm trying to book for someone, I may focus on one site or another based on where we are with the clock. But there are appointments that come out at any time in between. But those 6-minute increments are where the hunting is the best.
Got it. So I'm wondering if we can bring in our other volunteers. Lovely. So this is, I call you guys the heart of the epicenter, which is kind of cheesy, I know, but I really feel like you're all heart, it really takes a lot to do what you all are doing, because it's not, I often say the booking is just the start of it. As you know, when you pick up the phone and tell someone, there's all sorts of other issues. So speaking of issues, I just wonder if it's worth rewinding a little bit to the vaccine itself. So even though most of the people who come to us are not in that, don't have a case of what's being called vaccine hesitancy, right? By virtue of them signing up to get a vaccine, they have accepted they need to get a vaccine. However, I've been surprised by the number of people who I call to say we're able to book you, or we've just booked you, and they'll say, well, I heard that Moderna just really puts you out, so could you please get me Pfizer or J&J? So we have Sarah Kulkarni with us, who's one of our volunteers. I don't want to say the best volunteer because there's a bunch of us on right now, but pretty good. Just wonder how you would respond to that question. And also, you've done more than, I don't know, 120, 150 bookings yourself. Has that question come up? And you actually have expertise. So how do you answer it?
Thanks. So nice to be here with everybody. And this is such an all-star team. So nice to be almost considered the favorite. I would say I am a COVID researcher. We're doing some COVID research at CUNY. And I would say for most people, the answer to that is whatever is offered to you first. There is a caveat that some people do need Johnson & Johnson because it is one shot and you may work 7 days a week. And for you, taking time off work twice is really difficult. So there may be some logistic considerations to get just one shot. There's definitely, or some people have allergies and their doctors may recommend Johnson & Johnson. And if your doctor tells you that you should get a particular shot, that is what I would go with. You know, we're bookers, we're not medical experts. So I would always go with what your doctor recommends. In terms of the side effects that you have, I know some people are concerned about that. It seems like, and from what we're hearing, it seems like it really varies from person to person on what people are experiencing. If you've had COVID or you haven't had COVID, you may have a different experience. Another reason that you may need a certain vaccine is if you are under 18, you would only be able to get the Pfizer vaccine because that's the only one that's authorized for under 18-year-olds. But really all of these vaccines are fantastic vaccines and they have an emergency use authorization by the FDA. And what they're really good at is they're really good at preventing severe disease, hospitalization, and death, especially. And the way that the studies were done is they were all done compared to an unvaccinated person. So they weren't done compared to what we call a head-to-head trial. So they weren't done comparing Moderna to Pfizer to Johnson & Johnson. They were all done looking at the same outcome. They were all done looking at, will this prevent severe disease and death compared to an unvaccinated person? So it's really difficult for us to compare one vaccine to another.
Mitra, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, so the question is actually wrong in terms of Johnson & Johnson versus Pfizer. You're saying they haven't really looked at it in that way. If the question is efficacy, yes, you can take these vaccines, and I don't think it's hyperbolic for me to say, and you won't die from COVID, right? I mean, is that kind of the bottom line here? I just want to make sure that
answer. I think that is I think several officials have said that's the line that they said, look, the line here is if you get vaccinated, you are very likely you are not going to get severely ill from COVID. That's the line.
Okay. So before we go to the next portion of Kris's training video, another thing that comes up from like the questions I've gotten, I must get a Sunday at Jones Beach. Like, that's the only day I can go. I keep trying to get it. I can't get it. So I'm going to ask any of the volunteers to jump in on that one, although I am looking at Abby, who I call a super booker, to maybe start to kick that off, and then I'll ask the others if they have a different tactic.
Yeah, I mean, hi, everybody. Here's the thing. It is actually what I would encourage everyone to do is to be really open to going whenever you're able to get the appointment. And of course, everybody has some parameters. There is work, there is kids, there's all the different things. Unless you're pretty skilled at this, and I'm not trying to be in a negative way, but just in a realistic way, it's pretty hard to pinpoint a day unless you are okay with pinpointing a day, a Sunday that's 3 or 4 weeks away. Usually that's only with the state sites, by the way, with the ones that Kris's video just showed. The state sites are the only places that book farther than 2 weeks out. Everything else, and the ones you're going to see, which we'll talk about more, a lot of them they release appointments tonight for tomorrow or for the next few coming days. But so, for example, all the state sites, which are all the ones that are listed on that Am I Eligible page, that first page that Kris showed you, they're booking now into the end of May. So if you really can only do Sundays, I would suggest focusing on or being open to the fact that Sunday might be 4 Sundays from now. And again, like Kris said, eligibility just has opened up. It is always a lot harder for the first few days after that happens because there's such a crush and a crunch, even for us. And at this point, I can pretty much book anytime I want, anywhere, any place. And it's still a really, really, really tough few days right now. And it's going to get better. Just know that even if it's really, really hard right now and tomorrow and even into next week, that will ease up. More and more appointments, like it is getting easier, but it is a crunch time. So don't be discouraged if the next few days and even into next week are really, really hard.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling that right now. And I don't know about all of you, but I've been getting text messages from people like, did you get me in? And I'm like, not yet. It's coming. It's coming. So,
and some days are feast and some days are famine. There are days I book 20 and it's like, yay. And there are days where it's like, I've gotten 2 and it's a struggle. So patience is really, 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 you have to go a little zen with it sometimes.
So just a reminder, you're watching Epicenter's live stream on how to book a vaccine, even when it tells you there are no appointments available. We're joined by our volunteers who've been doing this work for weeks now, the heroes themselves. We field your questions in the comments of the platform that you're watching on. So Twitter, Facebook, just leave a comment and then we can answer your question. And we will be doing that throughout. I think it's a good time, Kris, for you to set up what we're going to see next.
Okay, sure. Next, we're going to take a look at the New York City Health Department's website. It's the first 3 letters of it are VAX, and so the bookers, we often refer to it as VAX, but it's the New York City Health Department website, and it covers clinics all over the city. I do want to mention that there are sites that will map your location. So if you're, say, trying to choose between which of these sites I should be looking at if I want to go to a particular area, there is a site, Vaccine Finder NYC, where you can go and map out where you're going, and it'll show you which location books at what place. So this next place has locations all over New York City, lots and lots of different clinics. They've been expanding regularly, and this will show you how to do the same kind of refresh and see the cancellations. There were a couple of changes to this site just in the last couple of days, so I had to refilm some of this and did my best with a description of how it works. So this is the New York City Health Department's website, which can be used to book quite a number of clinics around New York City. So when we come here, we select Schedule First Dose. So we're still working with the same patient from the first example, who is a public-facing government worker, and selected the category that's appropriate for her. She's not a city employee. I'm going to cut and paste her date of birth and her zip code into this screen here, and then I'm going to certify that the information I'm entering is true on her behalf. I'm hitting Next. Now I'm indicating that she has not had any reaction to components of the vaccine in the past, putting in her name, and I'm doing an I am not a robot verification. In this case, we have parking meters, hitting Verify and hitting Next. Now I'm into the screen where I can see available appointments. Now you'll see at the top it asks for a zip code. Now, entering that zip code on this screen is the way we're going to refresh without having to do all of those previous check boxes and entry of her name, etc. every time we want to refresh. Every time I enter and delete the last digit in this zip code, that's what I'm doing right here, is in and out with this zip code. Every time I do that, it refreshes the screen and checks for more appointments. I'm actually using the 0 and the delete key with my left hand for that zip code, which keeps my right hand free to navigate the mouse to select any appointments that I see that I want. I shot this demo the same night that they changed this website around a bit, and it's Tuesday night. It's March 23rd, just after midnight. And it seems to me that the date is changing a little bit on me. Maybe it's picking up some appointments and resetting what date I'm starting my search on. So I'm going to keep that date to the 23rd because I want to see any appointments that are open starting today. This website puts out the cancellation appointments at the top of the hour, then a quarter after, then at 30 minutes after the hour, 45 minutes after the hour, and again at the top of the hour. I actually have put the seconds visible on the clock on my computer so that I can see exactly when that time is going to turn. And I'm refreshing the screen here by entering and deleting the last number of the zip code, and you'll see what happens at 12:15. It's not a large number of appointments that come out, but a handful more appointments. Here you go. The website was recently changed, so I'm just looking at 1 day's appointments at a time, and I can scroll back and forth between various days. I didn't get that first appointment. I wasn't fast enough. I'm going to select a different one, and then I'm going to hit next, and now I can enter the person's name, and I have all the time that I need to enter that information. Once I'm into this screen, I can actually go back without losing the appointment. See, I can still go forward and stay in that same appointment. But if I want to check and see what's available on other days, I can scroll through and see other days as well. This is how you can switch between the various days. So a handful of appointments were released for various days at 12:15. After I enter the information and follow the prompts and book the appointment, I'm going to get an appointment number that should look about like this, a combination of letters and numbers, which can be put in to reschedule an appointment or to cancel an appointment if I want. And you can select to reschedule or to cancel an appointment from that first screen where we chose to book a first dose. But I can go in and check and see if I see a time I like better by choosing to just take a look and reschedule. Until I confirm that I want to reschedule, I will still have the original appointment. So something that I want to build on there from something that Abby said about the state site. If you, for instance, were to book yourself one of those Sundays in May and then wanted to keep an eye out for something nearer, you can do that. You can cancel a state site appointment without too much difficulty. In fact, it's quite easy. So personally, when I'm assisting someone, when I'm dealing with a loved one's appointment, I make sure that they have something, and then I might be able to improve it. And you can do that also very easily with this site with the reschedule option. So you get something that'll work okay, and then keep an eye out for what comes along that may be more convenient. And that certainly is something you can do for yourself if you're booking for yourself more easily than a volunteer might be able to do it on your own behalf.
So another question we get asked a lot is, I only want the J&J vaccine. So I know there's one way you can get that, which is the Homebound Senior Program, which Elena is one of our experts on. So I just wondered if you could talk about that. And then Elena, if you could address what if I only want J&J and how to go about that, and then we can open that up to the other volunteers as well.
Well, unfortunately, it's hard for people to access the J&J vaccine. As Sarah mentioned, some people are allergic to components of the other two vaccines, and J&J is really their only option. It's still not available, as far as I know, at any hospital settings, which is important for allergy, people who have had allergic reactions. And then what we're hearing from seniors or homebound people who have signed up for the Homebound City Vaccination Program is that they are still waiting weeks without an appointment scheduled from the homebound team. But it is also available at some pharmacies. There is a way that you could arrange your own pop-up in your own neighborhood, reaching out to pharmacies and other groups like mutual aid groups to bring the vaccine to people where you are who need it. There's been success with that in the past that we've been aware of.
That's great. Does anyone else have thoughts on for the questioner who's asking, I only want J&J, how would they go about that right now? The good news is
available, I think, at the NYPD Community Center and at Co-op City in the Bronx.
Other than that, you have to be patient. More's coming. It really is just a supply issue, and everybody is so ready to be like, give me the shot. And me, by the way, I haven't had mine. I'm in California, and I'm the same way. But just be patient. There's plenty more of J&J if that's what you need or prefer. It's coming. It's just a few weeks away.
So we have a question from the audience, I believe. Okay, why do the centers restrict by borough? Is this slowing down the vaccination process? Good question. Who wants to take that?
I can take that.
Sure, Kenisha, go for it.
It really depends on the specific borough. So these boroughs are combating misinformation. So sometimes it's more of an educational process for that community to get them to buy into a vaccine. There's been so many instances throughout medicine where certain communities may not have that trust instilled. And then second, it's due to technological disadvantages. It could be due to their job situations. They may not be able to go during the weekday, like some folks that are working from home. They're on their feet all day. They can't refresh a page like we can all day. So it's really important to reserve that supply for those particular communities, because in the beginning we saw a lot of folks were coming from upstate traveling to Manhattan, from Long Island traveling to Manhattan, and vice versa. So when the entire state is competing for supply in specific boroughs, it really disadvantages those folks that populate those neighborhoods to getting access to the vaccine. And at the same time, they're also more likely to be getting a coronavirus and also suffering some pretty large impacts from it as well, whether it's loss of life or being out of work for several weeks. So we want to make sure that we are prioritizing those communities first.
Anything else on this? Okay, we have another question for the city sites. For example, Brooklyn Army Terminal mass vaccination site. Do you know what documentation is needed to show that you have one of the approved underlying conditions? So documentation is a space that Epicenter has been mightily obsessed with for the last few weeks. We do have a public folder. We'll show you some of that. And there it is. But anybody want to take this question? If we could pop that back up on the screen for what is the documentation required at the mass vaccination site. This one uses Brooklyn as the example, but you guys can take this for any of the, whether it's Javits, York, et cetera, to show an approved underlying condition.
So for the city
I'm going to ask you guys.
For the city sites, you can self-attest. So you can download the form and you're basically just attesting yourself that it is true. Now, this is an important point because you need to make sure, in order to not get turned away from sites where we have seen people get turned away for lots of different reasons, follow the instructions that are in the confirmation email from the site itself. Whatever they say you need to bring. If it's through your work, something from work. If it's for your age, your ID. If it's a comorbidity, whatever they need for documentation. The city sites like Brooklyn Army Terminal will allow a self-attestation, but a pharmacy will not. So this has been confusion that we've seen and people getting turned away. The pharmacy needs something from the doctor to prove that, but the city sites don't.
A lot of hospital setting places will also want some of that documentation. And the state sites are like the city. They just do the self-attestation.
Anything else around documentation that you've seen trends on from any of the volunteers?
If you have a site that's restricted by zip code or area, Sometimes you need to prove that you live in that area and you're eligible for that particular site, in addition to all of the other eligibility for the state to get the vaccine itself. So we've seen people get turned away for not having a utility bill or an ID that shows your address in that zip code. So that's something to keep in mind. Like I said, follow all the instructions that they send you when they confirm, and they should be clear about what you need for that particular site.
So we'll keep answering questions, but I think we can show our last portion of the video training. Kris, you want to set us up for what we're about to see?
Sure. The last video is the Health and Hospitals website. And I do show it to you in two different ways because it behaves differently if you're in a standard regular old internet browser or if you're browsing in private or incognito mode. I personally prefer the way it behaves in incognito mode. I find it easier when I'm doing a booking, but I show it to you both ways so that you can make your own choice and decide. Or so if your particular browser acts in a certain way, you'll have seen both behaviors from it. So this is the New York City Health and Hospitals scheduler. The first thing you do is go through all the questions about eligibility, and you'll go through these much more slowly when you do them on your own. I'm answering questions about patients' eligibility, where they live, a couple of health questions, and then you get down to a drop-down where you select the category of eligibility. In this case, the patient is a public-facing government worker, and I'm just going to keep scrolling right down here in the drop-down. So as I'm selecting the category, it asks me to put in where it is that they work, and they also ask for a phone number. And I'll just use her phone number, since that's the information that I have available at this time. Now, this first example I'm showing you is in a standard browser. I'm using Chrome, but any browser will do. When you check this button, and then hit show the appointments, it pops out in the same window in the browser, and these are the appointments we're looking at. And this is what happens when you click on an appointment. You have to again tell it that you're not a robot, clicking on the traffic lights, and then you hit continue and continue again, and once you get to this window where you're entering the person's information, you have a few minutes to complete the task. You're not racing with people. Now, I'm going back because I want to show you how you refresh this screen without having to enter in all of that information again. In a standard non-incognito, non-private browsing window, I want to make that little heart reappear right here and make the screen refresh and show me most updated information. So I check and uncheck the box next to the person's name, and that's all I have to do in a standard non-incognito or non-private browser. Now I am going to speed it up here and go and fill out an incognito browser and show you how it behaves in incognito. So excuse the speed here, you'll go more slowly when you do it yourself. So I check that box, I hit I'm not a robot. Now I see this orange bar. When I hit that orange bar in incognito, I get a pop out. The window pops out into a separate window, and in that window I can use the same Command R on a Macintosh or Control R on a PC to refresh, just like on the other websites. I do that with my left hand and have my right hand free to select the appointments. Now for any of you that want to get fancy, you can copy the address from the top here, put it into a different tab, and deploy an auto refresh on this, but you really don't have to. You can use the keyboard keystrokes to refresh. Now this website puts out its appointments very consistently at midnight. New appointments in larger numbers, sometimes for the next day, sometimes for a week out. And here they are. I shot this on Friday night, early morning hours of the 20th, and they're putting out the appointments for the 27th in a variety of boroughs. So this will go on as one wave of appointments gets claimed, another is put out after midnight, and then usually a smaller batch around 1 o'clock in the morning. So I wanted you to see how that looks. We have lots of time to click on the appointments and get ourselves signed up. I'm going to speed this up a little bit just so you can see the booking process one more time. I'm going to click on an appointment, and then I'm going to say I am not a robot, click on all the pictures, and then continue right on through to where I can enter the address. So the pace that you see me clicking there is much slower than I would have needed to click just a couple weeks ago. it does seem to me that the supply of appointments has eased up a bit, although the last 24 hours may not be characteristic of that. I myself have gone through all of these websites, sort of like tech help, tell me what you see on the screen and I'll follow you style with people by phone and show them how to do this, and been getting text messages for weeks from people saying, everything you showed me, I used to book my neighbor, and then I showed my sister. And so I would just encourage everyone to give these a try, and to share this information with other people, because it really is doable at this point. It can be done.
We have a question from Grace. What about searching vaccinefinder.org for J&J?
So this is a good point. You can filter on this site that she's talking about. You can filter by vaccine. It tends to only be useful for pharmacies, but that may be coming.
I'm also going to be very honest. I mean, I have used that going, I'll find some J&J, and it tells me that it's places, and it just isn't right now. Unless you very specifically right now, and it's really just, I promise, for the next few weeks, or maybe at the most, mid-April to the end is when they're saying. But I've gotten very excited being told about pharmacy J&J supply, only to find that it's not there. So unless you're a very specific pop-up or an event or a location, there's the Bronx Co-op. Tell me if I'm wrong, Kris, Sarah, you guys need to check me. And it's NYPD, the other one in Brooklyn. Those two places we know specifically right now are servicing J&J, but other than that, it's really a wait and see.
And Vaccine Finder NYC does indicate them as a J&J site, as opposed to the others. So that both of the vaccine finders can be used, although I'm consistently telling people, I want you to be aware that I can't choose for you what's going to be there when you get there.
And the Co-op City site, where they have the J&J and the community center open to bookings, that was also in the city's pilot program for the homebound program, where they went door to door through Co-op City with the J&J vaccine is easier to transport for the homebound.
Yeah. I was looking for the alert on my phone because I got one, to Abby's point, saying it's coming. I got something saying it's coming to New York next week. I believe in like the tens of thousands, but I don't want to misstate the number. But it was a big enough number that I thought, oh, that might change things. A question from another Kalita. I cannot tell you if we're related or not. If folks want to volunteer, how can they get involved? So this is a really good question, because on the one hand, I mentioned we have 150 plus volunteers who've signed up, and in some form or another, they've helped. And not all of it is just by booking appointments like these fine people. The greatest need right now is actually getting the word out. So it's flyering. It's speaking to people in their native languages. It's, oh, Elena, you got the flyers?
So what I did was I downloaded the template. It's a little outdated now because the eligibility has been expanding rapidly. So now I have a million of these that I have to fix. But yeah, like everywhere I go, they're like, oh, that's the vaccine girl. Tell her, what you want. And they're all over, like in the windows of all the restaurants. The delivery drivers have them, and you can do this in your own neighborhood. And it goes to the phone number I didn't realize is actually someone's cell phone, but she has graciously given it over to the cause.
This is our cell phone. That's okay. It's okay. I mean, it's a good cause, because every day we check this phone number, and there are people who are not on the internet and need help getting their vaccine. I was going to ask each of you, like, very quickly, round robin style, for kind of tips, tricks, and your favorite site. We got to do this fast, because I do want to make sure we get out of here and not keep people for too long. So Kenisha, I'm going to start with you. Any secrets you have, and what is your favorite way to book?
My favorite site to book on is the state sites. So one, they want you to get the shot. So if you're eligible, they're not going to ask you to produce some sort of obscure document. Great experience. You go there, you're in and you're out. And there's always cancellations coming through, whether it's because people have supply at their schools and maybe their educators and they cancel their state appointments. So there's always an update every 6 minutes, like Kris said. And then there's always a list. So if you are targeting a certain date, you can just ignore that first appointment, scroll down and click something, you will get it. So it's definitely a better experience than the other websites. There's so much supply at the state level.
Kulkarni. Sarah.
Well, mine used to be the Vax4NYC site until they redesigned it this week. And so now I can no longer say that in good conscience. So I am going to go back and say, I think it's probably going to have to be the state sites, because if you go, the wait's not that long. Health and hospitals is usually pretty good to book, but it's, sometimes you could get stuck with a little bit of a wait when you go. We've had people that have had a little bit of a wait, so that, once you get the appointment and then you go and you've got a little bit of a wait at the site, that can also be hard for people that have taken time off work. So wanting to make sure that the actual vaccine experience is good.
Abby.
Yeah, just because I feel Sarah's pain. What Sarah is talking about is really just a problem for us, people who are trying to book many people. If you're booking for yourself and the individual person, all the sites are great. To get one appointment anywhere you go, they've changed it. They make it difficult for us to get multiples, which is okay because we're still going to do it. My biggest piece of advice is find an hour. 1 hour, and actually sit down and do it for a concentrated 60 minutes. Right now, all the stories I hear are, I check back every 20 minutes and I click on it again, or I check back every couple hours. If you are able to, and I'm not taking for granted that sometimes this is hard, if you are able to sit down for a concentrated hour, no matter how you can do it, even if that means calling the hotline, those people are fantastic. Call the hotline. If they say no, call back again. They will help you get an appointment. And if you have somebody that's not real good, just keep calling. The hotline is great. You don't have to sit on the computer, but just give yourself a focused amount of time, and I promise you'll get one.
Kris Brewer.
I would say similar. Don't get discouraged and stick with it, and recognize that this can be a little bit addicting. It's something you can do for your doorman, for your neighbor, for your cousin. You can talk other people through how to do it for themselves if they're not comfortable giving you their information. And once you know how to do this, you have people all around you. So certainly volunteering with us is fantastic. We're a fun bunch. But right where you are, there are people around you who need this help. And once you get it down and you've done your first one, you can do a second one.
So I'm just looking up on my phone. I have these vaccine hotlines on speed dial, and we're going to try to scroll them up. But it's 877-829-4692 for New York City. And the other one, and I'll put these in the chat as well. Does anyone know the state number off the top of their head? I feel like I should have it.
It's 833-697-4829.
And for anyone who does need to fill out a homebound form, that is located, if you scroll down on the Vax4NYC site, under Book First Dose, at the bottom of that, there's a click here to fill out the form.
Go for it.
I have one last little thing. Every neighborhood has an additional resource. I chose these three because they cover the most territory, but each neighborhood has at least one other really good resource. And so keeping your ear to the ground is another tip. Ask people, hey, you got your shot. Where did you go? Do you have any words of wisdom for me? Because in your particular neighborhood, there may be another major source of consistent appointments. But I didn't cover that particular source because I wanted to cover as much territory as possible.
Yeah.
And try your family doctor and your local pharmacist. Mm-hmm. Ask them when they're going to get the J&J, for instance. It's all coming. So
So the pharmacies, I think we have not dwelled on a lot because just from like a mass booking perspective, they're very hard. I hope that's okay to say, but they're just hard for the volume that we're trying to get through. Some of them require registration earlier before you actually book the appointment. So I think the advice to go to your neighborhood pharmacy and kind of see how you can do that is good. My favorite site has not been mentioned, but it has not updated in recent days. So I hope it hasn't, I hope it's not left us, but it's the Affiliated Physicians site, which books very quickly, but is just like the most seamless, calm experience of booking. So I don't feel like I have the frantic kind of, constantly refreshing except to see the appointments. And it feels, it just feels like I said, like a calm booking experience, which for our broader message of trying to associate good feelings with the vaccine, that really goes a long way. We have a question from Mira. Why do you do this? What motivates you? This is actually a great question for the volunteers because you all put more time into this than, dare I say, some of your day jobs. I don't know if your bosses are watching. Kenisha, I was following you on Twitter before you came into our fold as a volunteer, and this was something you were just like doing for people. So why and what motivates you? And then whoever else wants to answer after her, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I just hate when things are so unnecessarily challenging. So if I can tear down any barriers, make things easier for people, I want to do so. And I just have the time. So a lot of folks who need vaccines, these vaccines in particular, they don't have the luxury of having some time. I'm able to work from home. I've gained some time back from not having to commute. So if I can take a few hours out of the day to refresh a page and book appointments, I feel like I'm slowly helping with something that for the greater good. So I do this because I want people to be alive and be safe and then return back to some sort of normalcy. And it just feels nice in general.
I agree. The feeling that you get when you tell someone that they've got an appointment, that if it's a phone call or a text message, they're euphoric. And then when they call and tell you, I got my shot, they call and tell you how it feels. And it's just, you're so happy that you got to play a small part in something that shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be this difficult. And if you have a really fast internet connection and you got to figure out how to do it, then it's so great to be able to help people.
I cry every time. I'm not going to lie to you. I literally do burst into tears. Like, I do this because this is how I actually found a way to be a part of the solution. And every single person that gets a shot means my turn soon too. So it's like doing this, and I've talked about this with Mitra and some of these guys, has helped me survive what we're all going through so much more than anyone I have gotten the shot for. They're always like, what do I do for you? And anybody who says, what can I do for you? I literally say to them, do something nice for somebody you didn't expect to. It is absolutely paying it forward. Doing this makes me feel so good that I almost feel selfish. That's all.
I'm not going to say anything because I'm going to start crying. But what everyone else
Yeah, I can't follow that.
Well, it's true. I mean, I think this notion of doing something for someone else, we've seen that, right? So we've seen like, you helped this person. Is there a way I can help you? And then I always say, I'll start crying too, but I always say, gosh, so many of you who were trying to help kept us going for the last year, right? Like, these are people who had no quarantine. And like, I think that is what motivates me, is that I benefited from others who had to venture out and I didn't have to for the job that I do. So it feels like a fraction of giving back in some ways, given what we've taken from people over the last year, institutionally, obviously. So Kenisha, did you have something else you wanted to add? I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose the thought. Go for it.
Yes. Something that I've experienced actually in the last few months is vaccine guilt. I think it's definitely a common phenomena where folks, they qualify for the vaccine, but they are stopping themselves from getting that dose. I don't think I qualify enough, or I just feel like other people could use this dose more than me. And I totally get it. I understand where you're coming from, but when it's your turn, it's your turn. Please go and get that vaccine that is allocated specifically for you. The vaccine itself is the hero. You are not the hero for, stepping out of the line and letting someone else go before you, because you never know when you could be exposed. And I would really hate for anyone to, take that risk and then there is no reward. So the reward is the vaccine. Get it when you can. If you need to message me and you're embarrassed or whatever, please do. I'm happy to book it directly for you without having, to fill out a form. But it's so important. Do not feel any guilt. When it's your turn, it's your turn. This is super exciting. The last 12 months we endured was very traumatic. So if you have an avenue out, please take it.
I've heard this specifically with the BMI category. People are like, well, let's give it to someone else. I'm just overweight. But it's there for a reason. People are at risk of hospitalization and death. So please get it if you qualify.
I think in the words of one city official, she said, at this point, you're looking for reasons to get the vaccine as opposed to not, right? And so, there's a regular conversation. I'm sure you all are having it too. Like, are you working for a nonprofit? Are you in some public facing role? Are you, you sort of go through the checklist. And our documentation in so many ways has helped. So we have a folder where you can download the letters and essentially show, and you'll have to fill it out with your name. And in some cases, your supervisor has to sign it. But just seeing the jobs line up in that way really does also start to make you think about, who in my community do I need to inform that they qualify, because they might not even know. And I hope that that's kind of the takeaway, that those of you who've joined us to get trained also indeed pay this forward as a part of creating more community and, like I said, getting us to the other side.
On that note, Mitra, hey, can I just add, like, if you see somebody, you say, hey, did you get your vaccine? If their answer is no, let your next question be, do you need help? I think that if it's like, no, or they don't know how to do it. If you know anybody and you're just like, hey, did you get it? Don't be afraid to ask. And if they say no, ask them if they need help. And there are places that'll help them. Sorry, Mitra.
No, that's great. I think that's exactly what we're all about. So on that note, we are going to try to do more of these as the sites change, much to the, as you could tell from the volunteers' faces, much to their, I say disgust, but that sounds really strong. But, much to their distaste. So the sites are changing, eligibility is changing, and also where you can get vaccines, as Elena mentioned, like the pop-ups and other things that are coming to your community are worth checking out. So we will keep you posted. And if you have more questions, you know that you can always reach us through the social channels on which you're watching this right now, as well as our email. We are very easy to find, hello@epicenter-NYC.com. Everybody, please do stay in touch, but more importantly, stay in touch with each other. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.